Transitions. Last week I shared that my mom had made a very big transition from this earthly plane to wherever she is now, and that really kicked off for me some reflections on transitions, how we handle them, and what does it take to really transition well to an event or to something that has changed. And I asked you to think about where in your life are you facing transitions? Are you already engaged in a transition? Or perhaps where are you avoiding really acknowledging that a transition is needed, a change has happened and there's something that needs to shift? So if you haven't had a chance to think about that for yourself, please do take some time this week and just reflect on what parts of your life really are changing and asking for you to step up and really realize that there's a transition happening. The transition is really the internal process of how we handle change. And a colleague of mine, Bill Chalmers, often talks about the fact that we're not afraid of change, we're afraid of loss. And interestingly enough, that's the first stage of what William Bridges, a big guru in this whole area of change and transition, he says the first stage is endings, loss, and letting go. That's the first stage of transition. And that we need to acknowledge that there's an ending of something, that there's a loss of some kind, that there's a letting go that is being asked for. And so again, as I think about my mom and her transition, well, clearly there's an ending of her physical life here. And so I won't be going to Victoria to do the lunches and the visits and so on. But more importantly, what's the loss? And it's very interesting because I think we each deal with loss differently. We each even think of the loss in different ways. And so when I think about the loss, really I have my mom in my mind. I have all the memories, I have the feelings, the experiences, the gratitude for all that she did, adopting 5 kids, raising 6, an amazing life, well lived. And so what is the loss? And I think it is, the loss is in the present and the future of what things we will not be doing together any longer. And so important for me to kind of acknowledge what's shifted there. There are physical, tangible things I've lost in terms of mom and the future that we could have. But beyond that, if I don't have any regrets, I think that's the other piece that comes into play with loss and letting go. Is there unfinished business? Are there things I didn't say? Are there things that I didn't do that I wish that I had done? And so on. The more that we can start with acknowledging what regrets or missed opportunities there are, then we can move through the process of letting those go. In this stage, William Bridges talks about anger, hurt, sadness, all the classic emotions that have been identified that often go with the losing, the loss, the endings. But I do think it's very interesting how much your perspective on things changes that whole experience of loss. Because my perspective on my mom is that she's free now. She was trapped in a body with Parkinson's. She was not able to go out as much as she would want to do the things. She had a passionate love of dancing. And so that all had gone away for her. And so when I think of her now, I think of her as free. And so that's a very wonderful sort of comforting thought that she's free to be all that she really is. And so this week, as you think about things of transition, what are the endings? What's the loss? What is the letting go? Endings could be the acknowledging that my child is not a little boy or a little girl anymore. And when I work with parents, it's often really challenging for them to let go of those wonderful years when their children were smaller and to really recognize we've got a teenager. Because teenagers are very different from those young, wonderful, connecting times that we often have with our children when they're younger. Teenagers are into independence and into power and freedom. And by the way, teenagehood starts at 11. It's not 13. They are already transitioning. Many kids are already thinking about the joys of being a teenager. They're already moving into that change. So it could be in terms of your children. It could be in terms of your parents as they're aging. It could be in terms of your own physical health, relationships. Are there some little endings? Are there some things where there is a sense of loss? Let's open up and really acknowledge that so that we can really embrace it and honor it and move through it. So that's the homework for this week. What are the endings? What are the little losses? They don't have to be massive endings. They can be small ones, but they matter. So I invite you to just think about that for this week, and then we'll look at the next stage of handling transitions.